John, now that we're back and rested from the winter meetings, back in New York, we're being joined by another New Yorker on the show, Harrison Bader. What do you think about that?
It should be great. Harrison is a very, very well-spoken young man. Should be a terrific, terrific guest. Was great for the Yankees defensively, one of the best in the game. And wow, is he clutch in the postseason.
We'll talk about that postseason with him, Aaron Judge, what it meant to be traded to the Yankees, how he found out that he was traded to the Yankees. And John and I are going to do some summing up of a free agent class that isn't quite over yet, but we have a lot of thoughts about if you stick with us on the show with Joel Sherman and John Heyman. Well, John, you and I have dragged our bodies a week after the winter meetings. We're too old for this. I think we've done those winter meetings at 28, 38, 48. For me, 58. You, I won't give your age away, a little older than me. But it means that we're well more than a month into free agency. We're not done. As we're doing this, we always want to stay evergreen. There are very, very good players who can change the arc of teams' off seasons still available. But why don't we review at least a little bit? Tell me something you've really liked so far, John, a deal where you think a team has done well.
Well, I mean, I think we all like the Aaron Judge deal because they needed to get him back. It was $360 million, a little bit more than maybe was predicted, but I think very fair, and he could have gotten more in San Diego and San Francisco. So that's the obvious one. I'm going to pick one not so obvious one that happened before the meetings. Once the meetings got going, I think a lot of these deals, I don't want to say get out of hand, but they went for very, very high prices. I thought one very reasonable deal was done earlier, and that was Tyler Anderson with the Angels, 3 years, $40 million. Turned out Zach Eflin, who was a reliever, good pitcher, but a reliever at the end of the year, got the same 3 years, $40 million. So I thought the Angels got a good deal with Tyler Anderson. So I guess I kind of split the baby there and picked Judge and Anderson, two things on opposite ends of the spectrum.
It's interesting, John. If Tyler Anderson waits longer, he probably gets more money. Do you think that's also true? The other guy who had a qualifying offer who jumped early was Anthony Rizzo. Do you think if Rizzo doesn't sign quickly that he does even better than 2 at 40, especially after Abreu gets 3 at 60? I don't know. Does he get up to there?
I mean, I think Rizzo is a fantastic player. And, there are teams that are looking at first base. The Yankees, they absolutely needed to bring Judge back. I felt almost the same way about Rizzo. He's great in the clubhouse, terrific defender, left-handed bat, which they obviously, they couldn't have switched off and gone to Abreu. They need a left-handed bat at first base. So, I feel like he probably would have gotten more, but, I don't criticize anyone who wants to be a Yankee, and he obviously wanted to be a Yankee.
I hate to be provincial, but the move I like the moves the Mets made with pitching. I really do. The Verlander deal, I know people go $43 million a year for 2 years. Well, once Scherzer signs for 3 at 43, the great older pitcher is going to get that amount of money if he wants to keep it short. Yeah. DeGrom would have gotten it if he wanted to do a 3-year contract. So I think that is kind of in the realm. And I heard people talking about it like crazy, as if Justin Verlander had just gone 10 and 15 with a 4.50 ERA. He just won the AL Cy Young. I like Quintana at 2 years at 26. I like David Robinson at 1 and 10. And I like the trade for Brooks Raley, who brings in a real lefty reliever that they didn't have last year. And if I was just pointing out, the Mets were in a bad situation this year because they had so many starting pitchers who were free agents. By getting Verlander and Quintana done through next year, if Scherzer opts out, at least they're not in quite the level of desperate situation that they were this year.
I agree with one caveat. The reason it was 3 for $43 million is the Mets did set that market and paid Scherzer that money, which kind of obligated them to pay that to Verlander, who's also won 3 Cy Youngs that have had a very similar careers. It's going to be interesting to see them together again. Obviously, both type A personalities. They were with Detroit for several years together, and by all accounts, were not very close. We had Scherzer on. He was our first player on the show, and we both like him very much. But, maybe we're not pitchers. We're not in competition. It's not so easy sometimes in the clubhouse. A lot happens, but should be interesting to see. I'm kind of with you. once they made their bet at 3 years and 43 million, Verlander 2 years at 43 million was the logical deal. I heard teams criticizing it. I do think the Dodgers were fairly close. I couldn't tell you exactly what they offered. It wasn't exactly $86 million, or he might have gone there. He does have a home in LA. Mets probably needed to pay a little bit more because it did seem like he preferred to be LA. Of course, we thought that was Scherzer too. People are starting to like New York. Doesn't it seem that way? California is not so popular. That's one thing we learned at these meetings. San Francisco's having trouble getting people. The Mets brought Nimmo back, which I thought was fairly, somewhat reasonable.
You know that I left Nimmo out. I said I liked the pitching deal.
Yeah.
I
understand. Nimmo, to me, he's improving. I get it. In the past, he's missed a lot of time, but he has not missed much time in the most recent years. I think that was a matter of just supply and demand. Center field, there was nothing, unless you were going to tell Aaron Judge, I want to sign you and I'll make you a center fielder. Other than that, Kevin Kiermaier is a defensive player only. There really wasn't anything else. There was only one game in town. I think Steve Cohen rightly felt he needed to bring Nimmo back, just like he did with Diaz, which, as it turns out, getting Diaz early, I know it was a record deal for a reliever, so more power to him, but that seems pretty reasonable in this market to give him that $102 million, $86 million or so when you count the deferrals. I guess $87 million. But I think overall, compared to the other teams, and I think the Mets got individually, they got reasonable deals. That said, I think the other owners are probably going to come down on Cohen, and I give him credit for, he knows this, going out there and doing what he can to win games and to make the fans happy. And that's what he said he was there for, and that's what he's doing.
Yeah, we should talk about this, John. It's happening in our town and in our sport, which is Steve Cohen has taken his payroll up towards about 340 to 350 million, with tax penalties up over 70 million, because he's going to go so far over what got dubbed the Steve Cohen tax, the fourth threshold in the new collective bargaining agreement. He's going to spend well over $400 million on payroll in 2023. And I'll just share this, is I've always thought like this when it comes to very rich owners. Look, they're all very rich, but I guess I should separate the ones, the super rich, and there's no one quite like Cohen. I don't ever understand why they don't treat their baseball team like a yacht, right? Like if you bought a yacht, you would buy the best yacht you can get. You would outfit it the best you can outfit it. You would put the best staff on it, and you'd have the best parties, because the idea of buying a yacht is to have the most joy and the greatest status from doing it, right? If you could afford it, you're not expecting the yacht to throw money back on you. If you're like Steve Cohen, why not treat it like a yacht? Like, it's about status, right? Which is, right. Think about his reputation, how much his reputation, he did not have a great reputation coming into this sport because of problems with the SEC, etc. before he got here. Think about how a fan base loves him now. It's kind of cleaned him up. Plus he's having, as a Met fan, this great joy of kind of going for it. If it throws money back, whatever, he's an art owner. Until you sell the art again, you don't have any money to throw that gets thrown back on you. This is about joy and status.
Yeah, I certainly do not blame him. He is in a different category, I think, than all the other owners. I think the Lerner family is probably the second richest. I don't know. They don't give me their portfolio.
And they're selling.
And they're worth about, I think, less than $10 billion. So less than probably about half of what Cohen is reportedly worth. So, he's in a different boat, which is why probably a half dozen other owners were against bringing him in. He did obviously get the requisite 3/4 vote to get into the game. And, nobody should be surprised that this is the way he's doing it. I've talked to him several times throughout this. And, I don't want to say he's laughing about the tax, but it doesn't seem to faze him. And I could have sworn when I was talking to him on the phone, when he said 90% tax, it sounded like he said 90-cent tax, not percent, like it was almost nothing. Maybe I wasn't hearing it right, but he kept saying 90%.
John, I think it is
bitter.
I think it is almost nothing to him, right? Somebody who is in his world, when he bought the team, told me, I'm going to have to learn to think completely differently, because the difference between $300 million and $400 million to Steve Cohen when he wants something might be the difference between $50 and $100 to you and me. I mean, it's not going to change his life except for potentially make him happier and improve his status and reputation, which is what's happened. He's, he
Yeah,
should be happy. He had a team win 101 games last year.
right.
And, his reputation's great right now, at least among Met fans.
Right, right. And I want to just clarify, as I was saying that, I realized when White calls it 90-cent tax, it's because it's 90 cents on the dollar, probably. I don't know. I got a C in economics, and when he's talking to me about it, I really don't know what he's saying. So, but he did not seem bitter, did not seem upset. He seemed like this is the price of doing business, and he wants to win, and he's been a great owner. I mean, he's out there. He did our podcast. So anybody who does our podcast, we give them a big plus for that. But I mean, and he did it on short notice during the trading day. Incredible. He's been an owner amazing. I will say this. I got to give them props in San Diego because they're not as rich, and they do not have the revenues that the New York teams have. I know MLB thinks they're losing a lot of money. They are raising revenue. I know that, but there's a limit, and they have a long TV deal, which isn't good. I'm sure their TV partner is happy with them that the ratings are going to be so good, have all these superstars. I mean, I got to say, you said the best deal. The most amazing one to me was Bogaerts getting $280 million. I mean, I don't think he's a great player, but I don't think anybody saw that coming.
Yeah, John, if we're going to talk about Steve Cohen on one end of it, the Xander Bogaerts contract makes us actually have to probably talk about the Red Sox a little bit. I continue to not fully understand what they're doing. If I were asked,
you're not alone.
If you said to me right now, there have been a lot of contracts that I have not loved this offseason. If I had to pick number one, 2 years for $32 million for Kenley Jansen. Now, that's not going to break the Red Sox, right? And he was fine last year, but he's trending the wrong way as a closer. Closers are not kind of in vogue anymore unless you have the very best of them. Most teams are mixing and matching more than ever. This is like, you start thinking about Trevor Story last year to play second base when we wondered if he was broken, and Story, and like, wouldn't they have just been better off collect all the money and keep either Betts or Bogaerts and like homegrown players who are great? And I'm blown away by what feels like a zigzaggy no plan here from obviously smart people with a lot of resources.
Right, very smart people. They're right near the top on the revenues, no question about that. I really don't get it entirely either. I am a proponent of closers. I think having somebody like Clase or Diaz is a major advantage. I still think Kenley Jansen is good. That one didn't bother me. I mean, I saw tape of Yoshida. I'm not a scout. He looks great, but from other teams, I heard they were thinking 40 to 50 million. I know that the Jays and the Dodgers were in there. There was kind of a three teams at the end, and feels like the Red Sox paid a ton. They're going to end up spending $105 million for a guy who's below average defensively, which is a little surprise for an analytics run team. He does look like a good hitter, but I think it seems like they way overpaid on that one. And to way overpay on that and to underbid like they did on Bogaerts is the shocking one. Bogaerts, it's well documented. They wanted to add 1 year to the 60 million had left to circumvent that opt out and give them 4 years at 90 million. They were going to add 1 year at 30 million in the spring training. And I heard that right at the end of the season, they offered him 120 million. I mean, we didn't see any of this coming, and I don't blame them for not paying him Bogaerts 280 million, but it's something to be outbid 120 million to 280 million. I don't think we've ever seen that before.
Well, it feels, again, John, like maybe you don't want to go to 280 million, but it feels like a plan of the day because Story plus Yoshida is 230 million. Would you rather have Story and Yoshida, or would you rather have Bogaerts? At a well-timed moment, if they offered 230 million, Bogaerts would have taken it, and you would have had a homegrown player into the future. So it just feels like we're making up plans as we're going along, and it doesn't make sense to me. This is a team that has plotted well enough to win 4 championships this century. They're run by an executive in Heim Bloom. I think we both have great admiration for his intelligence. They clearly have money as the Boston Red Sox. What are they doing?
Well, first of all, let me clarify. They offered the 120 million in October. It was around 168 million or something like that at the time that San Diego went to 280 to win the day. So they did bump it up again.
But if they dealt with this last spring, John, with some
right,
of this
that's the
money, they,
mistake. Right. If
they
they'd offered that
directed it.
168, right. If
Yeah.
they offered the 168 or something slightly above that, maybe in spring training, they wouldn't have this issue. And now you've got Devers. I don't know that Devers, I do think that sometimes players are affected by seeing what's going on around them on the team, and losing Bogarts, would it affect them? I'm not sure, but it certainly will harden his stance. He wanted 300 million, right? And they were willing to go around 240, 250 from what we heard. I mean, at this point, with a guy a half decade older, almost, Bogarts getting 280 million, you can't really give Devers 240 million, right? They're going to have to come up on that one. So, it seems like they waited too long, they acted too late, and it's cost them. And they finished last year. And it's not all Heim Bloom. I mean, he's the general manager. He's the one who's taking the bullet. But I mean, ownership has got to be involved in these big deals, right? And I see there's comments, and they've been great owners, obviously overall, but about them distracted by owning the Penguins and the soccer team and all that. You wonder what exactly is going on there, because you finish last, you think you're spurred on, you're triggered to do something great, as I think the Giants are trying to do. They finished with a 500 record, not last. The Cubs seem to be trying. I mean, Boston at this point has gone backward, losing Bogarts. I agree that trade is not great to have Jansen and Yoshida and lose Bogarts.
Yeah, look, there was a team in the AL East that didn't get it done with an extension offer in spring training in the Yankees and Aaron Judge, but they ultimately got it done. I'm sure we're going to talk to the guy who's going to be playing next to him about that subject. That's Harrison Bader, who joins us next on the show with Joel Sherman and John Heyman. Welcome back to the show with Joel Sherman and John Heyman, and we're so pleased to be joined by the center fielder of the New York Yankees. One of our few guests will actually be in New York. He's talking to us from Manhattan because he's a New Yorker, is Harrison Bader. Thank you so much, Harrison, for joining us on the show. And I guess the place to start is the guy who you definitely know is going to be playing next to you now in the outfield for the Yankees in 2023. I wonder, even as a relatively new player to the team, how were you following this, and how much were you hoping that Aaron Judge would be next to you in 2023?
First, I just want to, thank you guys obviously for having me. It was great to meet you guys initially and coming to the team. So, it's always nice when we can do things in the off season. So I'm very happy to be here. I knew we were kind of jumping right into this. So, listen, I think it's important that every organization, when they have, special talent in players, especially when they obviously show up on the field, but what that talent and player means to the rest of the clubhouse. When you have that, which is very rare, it's really important when given the opportunity to lock it up for a long time. So seeing Aaron receive the contract he did is awesome. You mentioned I kind of signed on, kind of late to the party, if you will. But even in my short, time playing with him last season, I realized very quickly what he means to this organization, and I'm just tremendously happy for his success. And I just give him an absolute massive congratulations, because it's hard to really earn anything in this game, and for him to do it in that fashion and accomplish what he did is awesome. So I couldn't be more happy for him, and I'm excited to play with him next season.
Harrison, thank you again for joining us. Really appreciate it. You started with a different iconic franchise in the National League, the St. Louis Cardinals, where you played with some other stars, briefly with Albert Pujols. What do you? And you are from New York, Westchester product. What's been the difference being a Yankee versus a Cardinal?
Well, there are definitely differences. Small things like travel. St. Louis is a bit smaller and much more accessible with our airport, and the Midwest travel, night games or even day games before we have to travel. So, things like that are definitely different. But I have to admit, both cities have the same level of energy behind wanting to go out there and win a baseball game. Both organizations, both cities have tremendously high expectations for their baseball organizations. Obviously being from here, I have more friends that I've grown up with, and my family is very close. But with regard to the baseball, I mean, there's just both organizations operate at a very high level. So with the trade, as I mentioned before, I think as happy as I was to be in New York, I also realized that I was also very potentially close to being a part of some not so good organizations. And I'm just very, very grateful to just have an opportunity to, as you mentioned, go from one storied organization to the other. And I just try to take advantage of that every single day, even when I'm not playing in the off season. And there's a lot of weight that goes with both organizations. So I'm just happy to be a part of two wonderful franchises.
You were not a traditional trade, Harrison, in that you came to the Yankees as an injured player. You had a foot injury. I try to pronounce it, but I'm going to get the second part of it wrong in my Brooklyn accent. But you came with a foot injury. You were on a little cart for some of that, in a walking boot. I wonder if you could take us through that, what it's like to come someplace. And obviously, anyone who's watched sees you're a passionate player, and obviously want to show a new team what you're doing, and literally you cannot do it.
Yeah, it was definitely challenging. Life and this game, they always present challenges, and I think it's important to surround yourself with people that are always going to help you problem solve and move in the right direction. And that's really what this was about. It really wasn't a singular event that took place where I experienced pain. It was just a kind of eroding of an insertion point off of the bone that just kept getting more and more inflamed, and ultimately turned into something a bit more serious, and a stress reaction in my heel. But plantar fasciitis, it happens. It comes from working hard. And that's really all there is to it. It was very debilitating. I didn't only experience pain when I started playing baseball. It was, in the morning, and anybody who's had this it's just a nag. And it really is difficult to kind of get it out of your mind when you're trying to perform at a high level, because, every step you take, whether it's in the morning to use the bathroom or, try to beat out an infield single, the pain is there. So it was a challenge, but looking back at it all, just to be surrounded by not only a great medical staff when I got traded to New York, but also just my family that was dealing with, all the stuff behind the scenes, my friends, I leaned on them tremendously. So as physically debilitating as it was at times, I think it really just wore me down mentally. But again, life is really about problem solving and finding ways to, create solutions. And, I leaned heavily on a lot of people, and they supported me tremendously. So coming to New York finally when I was healthy, the easiest thing was just to go out there and just play the game I love to play. So, once you get past all that difficult stuff, the game almost became easier and much more simplified, if you will. So, yeah.
You seem to put all those complaints, behind you, not even paying any attention. I know when the trade was made, you were not able to play, which the Yankees expected, and Jordan Montgomery got off to that great start, and it didn't seem to phase you, and so you just came out and played. But then when you got to October, you starred in a very difficult environment, New York postseason. You think being a New Yorker helped prepare you for that? I mean, 5 home runs. And by the way, the Guardians, who are the smartest team, seem to keep throwing you a fastball. And, I don't want to give them any hints or anything going forward. But did you notice that? You just picked up on it and we're just looking for it, I guess.
There's a lot to unpack there. First of all, with the trade, whenever you're kind of traded, straight up for a player, you do some background and come to understand, kind of how we got here. And, I realized how really good Jordan was. And, the level of success he had with the Cardinals at the end of the season and after the trade, I absolutely expected it. His teammates, his former teammates with the Yankees, spoke tremendously high of him. So to see him have success was awesome. But, his success didn't have anything to do with my now being in New York and my trying to return to the lineup. So, I think it's really important, especially when you're in a position where you're trying to get back, is you really just have to focus so intensely on whatever you have to do every single day to get back on the field. And for me, that looked like coming to the stadium with a positive attitude, getting all my work done. And then when they said, enough for today, go home and just get some sleep and do it again tomorrow. So I really just tried to limit all the noise. And when it got to a point where I could finally play, the only noise was the cheers of fans because we were in the playoffs, which is, it's an amazing thing because it's such an incredibly difficult feat to achieve. And, this organization has done it so often, same as the Cardinals. So I was used to it. I was ready for the expectations. And I definitely think that there's an element of being a New Yorker that allowed me to kind of just relax, maybe just a few more percent. I don't really know if I can quantify it, but there was a very homey feel to being in that stadium. And, having been there when I was younger with my family, I mean, there definitely was something special about that. And then again, you just go out there and you just keep it simple and be a winning player and adjust and see how it shakes out for you. And I was just happy to go out there and play ball and just be healthy so I could be effective for my team. That's really all there was to it.
Harrison, one of the ways you think about how would the Yankees be better in 2023 than 2022, and they were pretty darn good. They won 99 games, got to the ALCS, is a full season of you in center field. John mentioned the 5 home runs in the postseason. You're 28 now. You came to the Yankees known for your defense, your base running. Do you think you're growing into power and that this will be part of your game going forward?
Yeah, I mean, listen, I like to think of myself as just I've always wanted to be a complete player, a total player. I want to help my team win multiple ways every single day. Listen, we're all strong. We train hard. I'm still young. I like to think I'm still young. Thank you for noting my 28 years old. But no, I think there's always
I could have said just about in 29, so I stuck with the 28 on it.
Yeah, it's true. I think I think we have to look at what creates power. And in my opinion, power is having good hand-eye, squaring up the baseball, swinging at good pitches over the plate, maybe anticipating what might be to come and putting just a short, good swing on it. So listen, when you do those things, the ball will jump for you. In no way am I a home run hitter. I'm trying to be a one-dimensional player. I think I can help my team win a lot of ways, and I just think the playoffs was just an example of just slowing everything down and just allowing the game to come to me and putting good solid swings on a ball. And it really is that classic example when you just try to hit line drives and stay in the alleys, the ball jumps for you. So obviously I was able to do it a couple times, but listen, I think the power's in there, and I'm just excited to go out there and just play with a level of comfortability being back in New York. And I think for me, health is the most important thing, especially considering the last 2 seasons, which unfortunately haven't been healthy. So again, I think if you just have a simple process, the ball will jump, and power can definitely be a part of my game.
I've seen this story told in the papers, but I haven't heard you tell it. The actual trade, it was kind of a shock to us. We knew they were interested in Montas and Benintendi, and they got them. And they were kind of looking around after that to do something as a bonus trade. And we were surprised. Where were you? Could you tell us your reaction when you were traded? Where were you? And what did you think going to the team that you followed growing up?
Yeah, sure. So I was physically located in New York because I had just received a stem cell injection in my heel about 4 days prior to the trade deadline. And the trade itself happened pretty late into the day. I'm not sure exactly how many minutes before it was the final, hard deadline, but it was pretty close to it. So, I think anytime you're traded, it's, especially if it's the first time, it's a shock to the system. I've spent my entire professional career in St. Louis, and, you create ties there. And, when I found out, I was obviously, I was sad. I didn't really know why or how. And, I feel like everybody has a baseball is a business story, right? So I guess this was just the beginning of mine. And I think it's important, again, too, to realize that as much as I was questioning and worried about it, and kind of just really taken aback by the trade, I did land in an incredible spot. And that's what was important to focus on. And, you have to flush things very quickly, I think, in this game, on and off the field. So um, as sad as I was to leave St. Louis, because there was just so much love there, there was only one thing to do, and that was to focus on the future and being in New York. So yeah, I mean, there's definitely a roller coaster of emotions, but this is what it is.
Harrison, I did ask about power. One thing you obviously have been known for is speed. I think before you hurt your foot last year, you're among the stolen base leaders in the sport. It's something that the sport is going to try to promote next year: bigger bases, fewer pickoff throws. Have you put a lot of thought into what it means for your game and what it means to the game in general, what's coming next year?
Yeah, absolutely. The pitchers are really good. We know that. They're how good they are is better quantified for people who aren't necessarily as close to the game as we are, and they can better understand how good these guys really are. So anything that promotes offense, which I think the bags and the lack of pickoff throws, is as crazy as it might seem, I think it does really promote offense, and I'm all for anything that's promoting offense and a faster pace and more aggression, because stealing bases is about aggression. And I think for my game, anything I can do to make my game sharper, to add another tool to my game, is going to help my team win, and I'm all for that. So it's definitely going to open up a lot of avenues for me to help my team win. I want to steal as often as as Booney, and as much as we all get together and talk about it and prepare about it. I always want to do it, because I know if I'm 90 feet closer, that's 90 feet closer to home, and that's a run for us. So listen, I have thought about it, and I'm looking forward to just diving more in as I get closer to kind of building up running and full speed and everything, and in preparation of hopefully a really aggressive base running preparation side of 2023.
Yeah, you're getting closer to free agency as you were traded here, and obviously you talked about how much you've liked it so far. Obviously, you really thrived in the playoffs, which the New Yorkers appreciate. Free agency is a big plus. Most players never get there. You see how it's worked out this winter for guys who did. What are your thoughts? Are you open to, if the Yankees want to sit down, to doing a long-term deal now? But I mean, obviously, you can't knock free agency looking at
it. You mentioned some players never get the opportunity to get to free agency, and that really is true. Every single day I spend preparing for a big league season in a big league uniform, thinking about playing at the big league level, is an absolute dream come true. And I just enjoy every single day. I feel very far away from even thinking anything about free agency. It was a tough end to 2022, and the only thing that matters is on my mind is winning a World Series in 2023. So anything contractually, I have 5 full years, and it's felt like a lifetime already. So the last thing on my mind is anything from a contract standpoint. We have much more things to focus on that go far beyond my individual contract. So yeah, I'm just taking it day by day and getting ready for a championship season 2023.
So I just want to be clear: the Yankees haven't made an attempt to try to do something with you this offseason to try to extend you.
No, nothing like that has happened.
Coming up on your docket, I hope I'm right about this, since we're doing this, is I think you've committed to play with Team Israel, right, in the WBC. Is that still ongoing, and what do you think about doing that?
So I did dive into it pretty intensely, and I did speak with Ian Kinzer, who's managing it, and some of the behinding players involved with the team. But it actually most recently, I kind of came to a conclusion that it really isn't the best thing for me, especially as I'm preparing to be the best version of myself for my major league club, obviously in the Yankees. So, just being game ready that early in the year is something that I've never had to do. And coming off of a difficult and finicky injury, if you will, it's definitely in my best interest for the team, so I can be the best version for my team, that I just have a normal ramp up, a normal spring training, and really maximize my rest, which is most important, and which is what allows this stuff to kind of really get kicked out. So I'm actually no longer playing in the WEC, but those things come every couple of years. Obviously, we saw a little gap with COVID, but who knows with what's going on, but I don't anticipate anything like that happening. So, when it comes back around and then and the opportunity is extended, I'll absolutely consider it much more, and we'll kind of go from there.
Well, as a fan of Team Israel, I'm a little bit disappointed, but I certainly understand you putting the Yankees ahead of anything else at this point. That's probably very wise. I have two unserious questions for you now. I see some artwork in the background. You an art fan, and also, you had fantastic hair with the Cardinals, and you really complied to 100%. Like I've never seen right away. Basically, shaving your hair down to a 1 or a 2, whatever they call that for the barber. I'm so glad to see it's grown back. I personally am against the hair rule with the Yankees. I know we're on yes, and I'm sorry to tell if Hal's listening. Sorry about that. I don't think there's anything wrong with long hair, but why did you do that? And do you intend to comply? And are you an art fan?
So first thing with the art. So I absolutely am an art fan. Actually, a friend's gallery of mine is located in Brooklyn. It's called Rotation Works, and it's a piece we're looking at behind me. They do like artist residencies for about a month or so at a time. Maybe it'll vary, but that's just a pretty funky piece of work that I love. So yeah, and then about the hair, so I definitely had like long curly hair, as you mentioned. When I got traded, it was kind of one of those things where no one had to text me or call me about it. It's just like, so now, we know we have to cut my hair, and my parents talked about it, and the first thing they said was like, how short are you going to go? And I'm like, I'm taking it all off. So, and in many ways it was just nice to kind of just, press the restart. I think with the amount of hair maybe I had, it kind of was symbolic of just, a new chapter that I was just looking forward to being a part of. And I think the hair just kind of reflected that. So, I came in day one with it was taken down pretty much to nothing. So, we're sticking with it. But, honestly, I got to admit, I like the look. It's very New York Yankees, late 90s, early 2000s. And that's a team I grew up with. So, I like the look. I like the way it looks in the hat. It's clean, and I will absolutely comply, no doubt.
I working with John Harrison is knowing that I'll always be second on the hair and art questions. But as a way to wrap up, truly one of the most enjoyable conversations I had this year was you happened to be at the World Series for one of the games, and you and I chatted for a long time. We were talking almost specifically about defense. It's probably the thing you're known best for. I thought how much you think about defense is fascinating, and I don't think anyone who watches you how agile and graceful you are doing it, but also the way you get behind the ball and make sure guys don't take extra bases. I wonder if you could, just as a way to wrap up here, if you could share a little what you shared with me that night, just how much you think about playing that position.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I mean, I really enjoyed that conversation. Obviously, I recall. I think it's important because a lot of guys are really known for their defense. And the reality of the defense for me, especially starting out, was that my defense and how much work I put into defense and preventing runs on that side when given the opportunity, that was going to get me playing time. That was going to get me at bats, which once I got at bats, once I got more at bats, once I felt more comfortable at the plate, then, my game would kind of come together, and I could really, be an effective piece for a team where we're trying to win a game. And the defense is just tremendously important because you just never know when the game is going to show up and present you with an opportunity to either help or hurt your team. And I was always raised by my father. I went to University of Florida where, the same exact notions were instilled in me, by Coach Brad Weitzel over there. And everything was about being a total player. You got to steal bases, you got to play defense, you got to throw to the right base, you got to hit. No backside runners, keep the double play in order, all these little things that ultimately come down to one run. If you give up an extra base because of an errant throw, then maybe a single up the middle, he scores when he shouldn't be on second, and then you lose that game by 1. Now, granted, a lot of pitches are thrown and everything really is a singular event. So you never truly know where the one run is gained or lost, but the point is if you work so intensely on preventing runs and throwing to the right base and making sure guys respect your throw in and you keep the ball low, all these little things are really separators. And as you progress and leaving the University of Florida and going through all these different levels in the minor leagues, and then you're playing different organizations that, some are better than others and some take care of the ball better. You really realize the importance of taking care of the baseball on defense and what it means ultimately after 9 innings. And I think that these small mistakes, especially when you're going for, a World Series, these things are kind of blown up, and they really, really do matter. And, guys like Willie McGee with the St. Louis Cardinals would always say, you have to prepare and imagine yourself being able to get a bunt down in Game 7 of the World Series or throwing to the right base of Game 7 of the World Series, because the level of preparation has to be when it absolutely matters with the utmost importance. And if I'm in a position where I can't, make a good throw, get behind the ball and prevent a runner from going second to third with less than 2 outs, and I make a good throw and he holds, now we got 1 out, maybe we, get a second out. But, if I don't get behind that ball, if I make a lazy throw, he takes third, and then who knows, he hits a lazy fly ball to the outfield and they score a run. So all these little things are with the mindset of Game 7 World Series. I have to be able to execute a fundamental part of this game. And for me, having so many controllable factors on defense, that was just something I just wanted to just sharpen up, every single chance I got to do it on the field. So yeah, it's kind of long-winded, but that's the gist of the conversation we had.
Yeah, well, no, I appreciate you taking us into that. Everyone probably who's listening to this already knew you were a great defensive player. They've learned you're an art lover, you're well coiffed, and you're still only 28 years old, not yet 29. And Harrison Bader.
We consider that young. That's young.
Yes.
We're young.
Harrison Bader, center fielder from the New York Yankees. John Heyman and I thank you so much for joining us on the show.
Absolutely. Hey, thank you guys so much. I really enjoyed this. Have a great day.
Well, talking to Harrison Bader during the regular season, John, I'm sure neither of us is surprised that he was a very interesting, captivating guest, and we're glad we had him on the show. What stuck out with you?
Yes, very insightful, very, very well spoken, as we know from dealing with him. And sorry about my hair and art questions. I know that's not serious baseball for you, Joel, but I think him just being serious about wanting to be a great all-around player is really what stuck out for me, that he's not going to join Team Israel because he's focusing on the Yankees, that he's not focused on the contract. I mean, for me, if I see those dollar signs out there and I'm a player, saw what was going on at the winter meetings where your average players are getting 70, 80 million and your really good ones are getting 200 million. I wouldn't get that out of my mind for a second, but, I give him credit, at least for enunciating that he is focused on the Yankees and getting better and not giving it a thought.
Yeah, if I were him, I'd wait, John. And the Brandon Nimmo contract would give me inspiration to wait, because he would go out younger than Nimmo. He'd go out as a better defender. We saw some of the power we obviously asked him about this in the interview. We saw some of the power. I think the rules are going to play to his favor coming up this year. He already was a superb base runner, one of the best base runners in the sport, a guy who could steal a base. That should help. I really think if you're starting to play the game on how do the 2023 Yankees, are they better than the 2022 Yankees? One of the key things is having Harrison Bader's defense for the entire season in center field, where you don't have to have Judge out there or Aaron Hicks out there, and the potential that his offense will play this year in an interesting way. Like if he's suddenly an 800 OPS center fielder with 15 to 18 homers and 30 to 40 steals and a Gold Glove, that is probably a much better overall player even than Nimmo. And so what does he get on the open market as a younger player?
Yeah, I'm surprised he isn't talking about it at the very least. He may not even be thinking about it. He's a very valuable performer. I give the Yankees credit for upgrading a weak offense and turning it into one of the best weak defense, turning into one of the best defenses in baseball last year. And certainly Harrison is a huge part of that going forward. Judge, as you mentioned, you want Judge in right field. I agree with you. He was actually good in center field, but he is great in right field, the best right fielder in the game. May have the best right fielder and the best center fielder. And I think we're going to see improvement at shortstop. Catcher won the Platinum Glove. We know what Rizzo can do. Their defense is in great hands.
Well, on future shows, on the show with Joel Sherman and John Heyman, I'm sure we'll be talking with what else the Yankees do, the Mets do, what else is in baseball. So thank you for listening to the show, a podcast from the New York Post. Thanks as always to Jake Brown and Andrew Hartz for producing the show. Don't forget, every Wednesday, you get to see that piece of art that Harrison Bader had behind him on the Yes app. It drops Wednesday at about noon. Subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get podcasts. Give us a 5-star rating on Apple and Spotify. And of course, listen to us every week on the show with Joel Sherman and John Heyman.